All right. Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast. Today, we are going to explore the top news headlines for April 4th, 2025.
Sounds good.
We've got quite a stack of reports here. And I think our mission today is to kind of cut through the noise and give our listeners the, need-to-know information.
Yeah, I agree.
So they can really understand what's happening both locally and globally.
Well, and what's so fascinating is looking at these headlines today is just how interconnected everything is. You see local politics with these national implications, international trade wars that are, impacting individual businesses, and then these really critical questions of justice and human rights that are playing out across the globe.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
A lot to cover.
It is. So let's just jump right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start in Nigeria, where the political scene in Edo State has taken a very interesting turn.
Okay.
Following his victory at the election tribunal, Governor Monday Okpebholo paid a visit to the Oba of Benin.
Right.
And the Oba statement was quite remarkable.
Yeah. He actually said that his ancestors brought Okpebholo to restore the glory of Edo State.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you think about the cultural context here.
Yeah.
The pronouncements of these traditional rulers, like the Oba of Benin, they carry a lot of weight.
Right.
It's not just ceremonial.
It's not just symbolic.
When he describes Governor Okpebholo as a, quote, true traditional son, end quote, and offers those prayers for protection against, quote, machinations of evildoers, that's a really powerful endorsement that resonates deeply within the community.
Right. And it seems like the symbolism didn't stop there.
No, not at all.
The Oba reportedly lifted Governor Okpebholo from a kneeling position and predicted more development for the state.
Oh, wow.
And then Governor Okpebholo himself called this unanimous tribunal decision the sweetest judgment ever.
It's interesting, it's the first time all three judges have agreed on an election outcome, so, it does add another layer of legitimacy to this victory.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, let's shift gears a bit here.
Okay.
We're seeing some major escalation when it comes to the U.S. and China and their trade tensions.
Huge development.
China just announced retaliatory tariffs of 34% on all U.S. imports.
Wow.
And this comes, just 2 days after the U.S. took similar action.
Right.
But China's not mincing words here.
No.
They're calling the U.S. move a violation of international trade norms and a direct undermining of their interests.
I can see why they're frustrated.
Yeah, they even use the phrase, quote, typical unilateral bullying practice, end quote.
It's definitely a high-stakes game of, economic chess.
It really is. And these tariffs are set to kick in on April 10th. But there is a bit of a grace period for goods that are already in transit.
Right. But even so, the broader impact is going to be really significant.
Yeah. And it's not just tariffs.
Yeah.
China has also added 11 U.S. companies to their unreliable entity list, including some drone manufacturers.
Interesting.
So that's going to restrict their business activities within China.
Makes sense.
And then they've imposed export controls on another 16 U.S. companies.
So essentially limiting
their
access to Chinese goods.
Exactly.
It's a pretty strong response.
It is.
And it's interesting, China's been using this unreliable entity list more and more as a way to respond to what they see as threats to their national interest.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of all that, they've also launched anti-dumping investigations into medical CT X-ray tubes that are imported from the U.S. and India.
Oh, wow.
And maybe most notably, they're imposing new export controls on 7 types of rare earth minerals that are headed to the U.S.
And those are used in a lot of high-tech manufacturing, right?
Exactly. Smartphones, electric vehicles, all sorts of things.
Oh, wow.
And China really holds a dominant position in that global supply.
Right.
Which gives them some serious leverage in these trade disputes.
It makes you wonder what President Trump is thinking.
Yeah, well, we got to remember, he had already imposed his tariffs on Chinese goods. Initially, it was aimed at curbing fentanyl, which had effectively raised duties to 54%.
Right.
And then this new 34% tariff on all Chinese imports, that's a major escalation.
It is.
And his administration even dubbed Wednesday Liberty Day.
Oh, wow.
As these tariffs were rolled out against multiple countries.
Okay, well, let's switch gears again and talk about something a little bit different but equally important.
Sure.
We're going to talk about a human rights situation in Nigeria.
Okay.
There's a young man named Precious Kingsley who has been imprisoned for almost 6 years
Very well.
since 2019
Okay.
over some missing jewelry
Right.
that belonged to the former First Lady, Patience Jonathan.
Got it.
And this is where it gets, really troubling.
Okay.
So Kingsley was only around 20 years old when he was arrested,
So young.
and he was preparing for his final secondary school exams at the time.
Oh, gee.
His only connection to this whole thing seems to be that he frequently visited his mother,
Okay.
Deborah Arema, who worked for Mrs. Jonathan.
Hmm.
And a family source said that Kingsley last saw his mother 2 months before this alleged theft happened.
So, I mean, was he even there when the jewelry went missing?
It doesn't seem like it,
Right.
and there's no solid evidence linking him to it.
That's awful.
It just seems like, guilt by association.
Yeah.
And a very flimsy association at that.
It's really concerning.
It is, and it gets worse. Kingsley's mother, Deborah Arema, along with 14 other domestic workers, have also been detained since 2019 in connection with this.
Wow.
Just imagine being held for years without clear charges.
It's hard to even fathom.
The report even states that Deborah Arema was prevented from burying her own daughter
Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking.
on it being detained.
That's just inhumane.
It is. And then there was another detainee who lost his primary means of support, his elder brother, while being incarcerated.
It just seems like a complete disregard for basic human rights.
It does.
It makes you question the entire justice system.
It really does.
And the fact that the Bayelsa State Police Command claimed they were unaware of the situation, but promised to investigate,
Right.
it just doesn't instill a lot of confidence, does it?
No, it doesn't. Okay, well, moving on to another report on violence in Southeast Nigeria.
Okay.
The International Society for Civil Liberties and Rule of Law has released this investigative report
You okay?
that claims that a staggering 80% of killings in the region
Wow.
since 2015 are attributable to attacks by what they call jihadist herdsmen.
Jihadist herdsmen.
Yeah, and that's over 8,000 deaths out of 9,800.
8,000 deaths. That's horrific.
It's a very disturbing figure, and the report identifies Enugu and Imo states as being particularly hard hit.
Right.
And they allege that around 300 Christians have been killed in the first 3 months of this year alone.
Just in the first 3 months.
Yeah, it's awful. And then the report goes on to detail a really horrific incident in Ebonyi State on February 2nd, where at least 20 people were allegedly hacked to death.
My God.
But it doesn't stop there. They also implicate the Nigerian military in extrajudicial killings.
The Nigerian military.
Yeah.
What are they saying?
They allege that at least 200 deaths between January and March of this year are attributable to the military,
Oh, wow.
under the pretext of neutralizing members of the Eastern Security Network and IPOB.
So basically, they're claiming that the military is carrying out these killings and just saying that they were targeting these groups.
Yeah, that's basically what they're saying.
That's incredibly serious.
It is.
If true.
It is.
I mean, are there any evidence, any proof to back up these allegations?
Well, the report claims that there are approximately 600 secret operational bases for these jihadist militants in the southeast.
Secret bases.
Yeah. And then an estimated 1,000 locations across eastern Nigeria harboring, I don't know if you're ready for this, a massive 400,000 illicit arms.
400,000. That's a staggering number.
It really is.
I mean, if this is true, it paints a really grim picture of, the security situation there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's concerning that there hasn't been any official government response to this report yet,
It really is.
especially given, the gravity of the allegations.
Yeah, the scale of the violence
Right, the number of reported casualties.
is truly alarming.
Yeah, it's deeply concerning.
It raises a lot of questions.
It does.
Okay, well, let's let's move on to a different kind of security issue.
Okay.
It's the fight against illegal mining in Nigeria.
Got it.
And we have a report of a successful operation by the mining marshals in Nasarawa State,
Okay, that's good to hear.
where an illegal mining site was shut down and 3 foreign nationals were arrested.
So they're actually making some progress.
Yeah, the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Deli Elig, confirmed the operation.
Okay.
And he's been pretty vocal about the government's commitment to cleaning up the sector.
It sounds like they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. But it seems like these illegal operator had been evading arrest for a while,
Really?
allegedly, with protection from some corrupt security personnel.
So there's corruption within the security forces that's allowing this illegal mining to continue.
It seems like it, but this time the mining marshals were able to break through
Okay.
and shut them down. Although some suspects did escape, allegedly aided by, these compromised officials.
So the problem hasn't gone away completely.
No, not at all. But there is a manhunt underway.
Okay, good.
And investigations are ongoing.
Good.
And it turns out the company involved and some of the fugitives already have pending criminal charges.
Oh, wow. So they've been on the radar.
Yeah, and since 2024, the mining marshals have made 327 arrests and prosecuted 143 for illegal mining nationwide.
So they are making some headway.
Yeah, they really are.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and the minister's strong stance is sending a clear message,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, making sure that Nigeria's natural resources are managed responsibly and legally, it's crucial for the country's economic development and overall well-being.
Right.
It's good that they're taking action.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so let's head back to the international fallout from the U.S. tariffs.
Okay.
South Africa has voiced strong concerns.
I can imagine.
And is calling for reforms to the World Trade Organization.
Okay.
In response to these tariffs.
Makes sense.
They see the U.S. tariffs, including this 31% levy on U.S. imports from South Africa, as a major disruption to trade.
Right, and especially with South Africa holding the G20 presidency right now,
right.
They're in a unique position to really push for these reforms.
Right, and they're concerned because these tariffs effectively negate the benefits they receive under the African Growth and Opportunity Act.
AGO.
Yeah, AGA, which provides duty-free access to the U.S. market.
Right, for many African nations.
And this move by the U.S. really undermines that.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It is. And South Africa's Foreign Minister, Ronald Lamola, highlighted the potential damage to their automotive and agriculture sectors.
Key industries for them.
Yeah, and he pointed out that it could lead to job losses and reduced economic growth.
That's a serious concern.
Yeah, and they also pointed out that while the U.S. is an important export market for them, South Africa's imports actually make up a very tiny fraction of total U.S. imports.
Right, so they're not a threat.
Right, they're saying that this measure is disproportionate.
It definitely seems that way.
It does.
And I think South Africa's call for WTO reform really highlights a growing global concern about the effectiveness of the current multilateral trading system, in the face of these kinds of unilateral actions.
Right. Okay, well, in some other news, the political landscape in South Korea has also seen a dramatic shift.
Okay.
The Constitutional Court has unanimously ruled to remove President Yoon Suk-yeol from office.
Wow, so he's actually out.
He's out, yeah.
After all that controversy.
Yeah, and this comes after his really controversial decision to declare martial law.
Right, and deploy troops to parliament.
Yeah, just 4 months ago.
It's been a whirlwind few months.
It really has.
Yeah, what happens now?
Well, South Korea has to hold a national election within the next 2 months.
Okay.
And opposition leader Lee Jae-myung is seen as a potential frontrunner.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
It will. Okay. Shifting to Japan now.
Right.
Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has reacted strongly to President Trump's tariffs on Japanese goods.
Okay.
He called them a national crisis.
That's pretty strong language.
It is. He's not happy about this at all.
I can imagine. Those tariffs are going to hurt.
Yeah, especially the auto industry.
Right. Japan's a huge car exporter.
Exactly. And Prime Minister Ishiba has instructed his ministers to take all necessary steps, including financial support, to protect Japanese industries and jobs.
So they're taking a proactive approach.
They are.
Trying to mitigate the damage.
Exactly. And they're also trying to arrange a direct conversation between Prime Minister Ishiba and President Trump.
Hopefully they can find some common ground.
Yeah. But it's not looking good.
No. I mean, with the way things have been going, it's hard to be optimistic.
Right. And finally, let's talk about the International Monetary Fund, the IMF.
Okay.
They've weighed in on these U.S. tariffs.
And what are they saying?
Well, IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva has stated that these new tariffs clearly represent a significant risk to the global outlook.
So they're basically saying that this could hurt the entire world economy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not surprising, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the world's largest economy engaging in these kinds of trade wars, it's bound to have ripple effects.
Right, and she urged Washington to work with its trade partners.
Okay.
Stressing that these tariffs are coming at a time when global growth is already sluggish.
Yeah, it's like they're pouring gasoline on a fire.
Right, exactly.
It's not a good situation.
No, it's not.
And, the IMF is going to be releasing their global growth projections later this month, and I'm sure these U.S. tariffs will be a big part of that discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's it for today's top news headlines.
Wow, that was a lot to cover.
It was from the local political scene in Edo State to the global trade tensions.
And everything in between.
And everything in between.
It's amazing how these seemingly disparate events are all connected.
It really is. It really is.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me was that human rights case in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I mean, that just highlights the importance of justice and accountability.
It really does.
And it's a reminder that these issues can happen anywhere.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for listening to the Today's Top News Headlines on IAMC Radio and Podcast.